Well, and I know because, we only grow up, and I'll be honest with you, we were sort of angry at my father. My father, had an explosive temper, and he could be, but he never dealt with his trauma. And that often happened with a lot of Holocaust survivors. And so then the next generation, we sort of don't understand until we really understand those stories. It's that by understanding those stories, it really frees us from, some of the things that we thought were really tough growing up.
Everybody, welcome back to Living in the Next Chapter, the author podcast. Get to talk to great authors from around the world. And when I find an author that grew up close to where I live, that's even better. And Linda's here to talk about her book, her journey, really fascinating story about uncovering your lineage, your family tree, and how a fire almost stopped the whole thing. It's amazing. I've been watching Linda on a bunch of different podcasts. She's a great guest to listen to, and we're going to have a fun time talking today. Linda, welcome to Living in the Next Chapter.
Oh, thank you for having me, Dave. It's really an honor to be on your show. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm in Niagara. You were from Buffalo originally.
I grew up in Buffalo, New York.
Right.
Yes, right across the Lake Erie.
There you go. Yeah, we're not too far from each other from where you grew up. How long did you live in Buffalo?
Until I went away to college. So I was
really?
born there, and until I went to college, I lived there. So
wow. Okay. Yeah. All right. That's a considerable amount of time. I like that.
Absolutely.
It's great people in Buffalo.
They love
their football there. They love football for some reason. I don't know what they love. Right.
Buffalo Bills, absolutely.
There you go. Yeah. Apparently they make you want to shout. Apparently that's what I hear. But yeah, it's good. It's excellent. It's great. So let's talk a little bit, Linda. We have listeners who are authors in the making. They want to share their story. They don't know where to start. They have a passion, right, to write, whatever it is. Maybe it's going to be writing about their family history. But they just need some inspiration from someone who's done it, someone who's been out there, who's gone through the process, and you've learned something. So there's got to be something that would be really helpful for a new author. Think back to when you were starting your project of writing the book. What would have been a helpful comment, information, encouragement from a fellow author that would have helped you when you started writing your book?
Well, let me go back a little bit, because I have to be honest with you, I never intended to write a book. So
Good.
It just sort of happened. So what happened was, as my intention was to learn about my family.
Yeah.
And to really dig in, to understand who I was. And so what happened was I ended up working with a Hungarian researcher, because my family were from Hungary. And we ended up being able to go back 8 generations. And the way we were able to do this was we found books that my family had written, right? Ancestors. I have an ancestor who died in 1920, and he had written a family biography. So we sort of started there, and that's how we were able to go back to the 1700s. So as Andras was researching this, and everything that Andras researched, he was an amazing sleuth, but everything that he uncovered, he would have to verify as being true. And so in the meanwhile, I have to be honest with you, my history education was not good enough to really understand what was going on. So I really dug deep and read as much history as I could, read other biographies, read other whatever I could of that era, so I could really understand the zeitgeist of the times. And in order to organize it, the best way for me to organize it, I found myself writing the book. So I think as an inspiration for authors, and it depends if you're writing fiction or nonfiction, but I think you really need to understand the time that you're writing about and read what you can. Even if it's fiction, if you're writing about a certain era, you want to really understand that era. because I think readers connect with truth,
Yeah.
and what was really going on. They don't want some, I mean, they want your vision too. They want your creativity, but it has to ring true. So
Right.
that's my recommendation, I think, to really dig into the era of the times and understand it.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing when you look back in family history and lineage and all of that, these are people. It's not
Absolutely.
just the son of, daughter of, husband, wife of. These are people with stories. There's a lot of stories when you see those names on a sheet, right?
Well, that was what was so remarkable to me because, yeah, you can put together a family tree, but every one of these people has a remarkable story. So to be able to learn their stories was truly just astounding. I mean, it was such a gift for me that I was able to learn their stories and then put them in the context of the times so that I can understand, why they made a decision or, why they didn't make a decision, why they didn't do this. And so it's really interesting to do that. And yeah, when a lot of people who have read my book have said, wow, these people could be fictional characters, but they weren't. Everything in there is true. As I said,
Wow.
Andras was such a stickler about verifying the truth. So nothing in there is made up.
Wow. Okay, so how long did it take from the point where you started the process of writing and collecting to where we are today?
It
What's that
was a
time
good
frame?
7 or 8 years.
Wow.
It was a long, long period, but it was, Andras was in Hungary. I was here, and it just takes a lot of time to really dig into that kind of information. And as I said, really verify that it was the truth. So
Okay, so there's a little bit of your own personal identity uncovered in the process of writing this. Well, I heard you on other podcasts talking about, finding out who your family are and who they're connected to and where they're from, all of that stuff. You're like, wait, what? So but that kind of moment happened. What did you know about your family growing up before the book and before all this research kind of lay out while you're growing up in Buffalo? What did you know about your family at the time?
yeah, well, just as you said, we grew up in Buffalo, and I grew up in Buffalo. I'm one of 7 kids. I'm smack in the middle, so I was always the troublemaker. But we grew up. We grew up. I thought it was a normal childhood. My parents were from Hungary, and I knew that they had lived through the war and came to the U.S. really to start a new life. We had 2 grandmothers that lived with us, but I didn't have grandfathers, and I didn't have cousins, and I didn't have anybody else. So, and then my parents never talked about the past. It was very rare. I mean, there were some things here and there, and you could tell they absolutely loved Hungary. So they would talk about Hungary. We ate Hungarian food, which is wonderful. And and we learned about Hungary, but we didn't really learn about their lives in Hungary. So I didn't really know anything. I didn't know about our ancestors. I didn't know about their names. My maiden name is Ambrus, but I didn't know about the Pulitzers and the Misners and all these other names that I discovered. So a couple important events. When I was in my late 20s, my sister, who, my parents were doctors and my older siblings are all doctors, and my sister went to a medical meeting in Montreal and stayed with her godmother. And her godmother's family had gone back with our family generations. Like my great grandmother was best friends with her grandmother. So we went back generations. And so she simply asked, she said, what was my great grandmother Margit like? And her godmother said, well, like most Jewish women, she was, So my sister, you can imagine the surprise on my sister's face. It's like, what? Jewish?
Wait,
'Cause
what?
we went to Catholic church every Sunday. So So, at any rate, that was how we discovered that we were Jewish. And when my sister told me, I asked my mom. I said, "Is this true?" And she said, "Yes, it is true." But my father, to his dying day, would never admit that to us. So he never admitted it. So it was so at any rate, so that was one thing, that we these little nuggets. And then when I went in 1990, right after the Berlin Wall fell, I went to Hungary. It was my second trip with my parents. And I asked my mother a lot of questions. I just peppered her with questions. But again, my history wasn't really good enough that I don't think I got to really the heart of the questions. So one of the things my mom sort of said to me, I'll never forget this because we were on Margaret Island. For those of you who have been to Hungary, and Hungary's beautiful, and there's this island right in the middle of the Danube, in the middle of the city, middle of Pest and Buda, and it's just a lovely, lovely place. And we were walking in the park there, and my mom sort of said out of the blue, she said, "Well, I hid some people during the war." And at the time, I had no idea what she was really talking about. I mean, I knew about the Holocaust, we'd learned about it, but I didn't really understand what that meant. So fast forward to 2006, and all of a sudden I get this invitation from the Israeli consulate in New York City inviting me because my mom was being honored as righteous among the nations. And I had no idea what that meant either. So I called my friend Fiona, who was a very close friend from business school. And I said, "Fiona, what is this?" And she said, "This is amazing. It is the highest honor that the Israeli government gives to non-Jews who saved Jews during the war." So, then after that, then I tried to learn more about her life. And I reached out. One of the people that she saved her whole family, was her best friend, Ava Fisher, who later became Ava Klein. And Ava and her husband were world famous doctors, and she was coming to Baltimore for a visit. And so I said, "Ava, can I meet with you and learn more about the story?" And so we got together. We got together a couple times, but both times she said, she would give me like little bits and pieces, but she always said, "It's just too painful. I can't talk about it. It's too painful." But I did learn a few nuggets from her. And then in 2011, my parents' house caught fire. And unfortunately, my mom died as a result of the fire. But she had already had Alzheimer's. She'd had Alzheimer's for quite a while. And in trying to sort of save things, my sister was pulling things out of the house and pulled out a box and didn't even realize it. And many years later, in 2015, I decided it was really time for me to look into my family history. And my sister is just sort of coincidentally, my sister was cleaning out a closet and she said, "Oh my God, I found this box." And this box has all these documents. They were documents and letters and photographs and so on. And, all the documents and letters were in Hungarian, which unfortunately we don't speak very well. So even though we grew up, my parents and grandmothers conversed in Hungarian, so we understand it, but I can't speak it. And I certainly couldn't read it or write it. It's a really tough language. But she sent me the box, and so that's how the journey started, is like digging into this box. And then as a result of some of the findings in the box, there was some letters that were between my father and the niece of his cousin, and that's how we learned about the family history book, and then also a book that my father's cousin wrote. He was 10 in 1944 when the Germans marched into Hungary during the war, and he was also autistic. So he wrote this book from his experiences from 1944 to 1945 after, excuse me, after the war ended. And and it details, I mean, it's amazing. It details what people wore, what they ate, what music they listened to, and
Oh,
sort of in
wow.
between all of those things, what they did, the actions that they took during that period, which was a period of incredible intensity because Hungary had largely stayed out of the war. They were sort of on the peripheral, and the Germans didn't come in until 1944, which was very late. And I mean, they already knew they were losing, but it was so intense. They knew they were losing, but they were still determined to murder all the Jews. So the intensity of what they were doing, shipping people off to the concentration camps,
Right.
marching them into the Danube where they were shot. I mean, just the intensity was horrific. And so it detailed what my parent, between that and letters that I found, it detailed what my parents went through during the war. So,
Wow.
yeah.
How far back are you able to go then with all of the research and all of the things done from all of the stuff you've done over the years? How far back can you actually go into your family?
We went back to the 1700s.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty interesting. And that's where, I really didn't understand the history. So I had a lot of reading and catching up to do to really understand what was going on. At that time, it was the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So it was really, it was an amazing journey. Yeah, yeah,
1700s.
yeah, yeah.
Like what, again, having that information written out on what people were wearing, what kind of food they're eating, that's really helpful.
Oh,
To
yeah,
kind of give you some context, right? That's,
absolutely.
you're not going to see that in every book out
Right,
there, right?
right.
So that's interesting. As you go through and you read through and follow your tree and your lineage, who stands out as some characters in your family that are like, I would love to meet and sit down
Oh, my
with
God.
my relative? Who stands out in
You
the
know
moment for
something?
you?
That is such a difficult question. And
I know.
because in almost every one, like I'll just give you a couple examples.
Sure.
One of them back in the 1700s, Rachel. Rachel she was born into a Jewish family. Her brother ended up coming to America and made a small fortune, came back and convinced his whole family to convert and go back to America with him. But she was, and we can't figure out exactly how old she was, but we guess she was somewhere around 12, 13, 14 years old. So imagine this young girl. She does not want to convert and she does not want to go to Hungary. So she runs away to a neighbor's house. And what happens is, in that time, we're talking about the Austro-Hungarian Empire. We're talking about a time when it was Emperor Francis II, and he, they were very anti-Semitic. Like his mother, Maria Theresa, called the Jews a plague upon the race. But then they got to be, with subsequent emperors, they were a little bit more lenient and so on. But it was all relative, right? So Francis is involved in all of these wars with France. That was during the time of Napoleon.
Right.
What happens was, at the time, if your father converted, all the children were required to convert. Well, the parents left for America, right? And so the Jewish community in this small town said, hey, why should she convert? She did not want to convert. So there was a legal case, and it rose up to the attention of Francis II, if you can
Wow.
imagine.
Wow.
And he makes a decision that she has to walk. One day it was set aside. There'd be Jews on one side, Christians on the other side. She would have to walk through the middle, and she could then choose between, and she had a choice. She could either become Jewish or Christian. So she chooses Judaism. And the rabbi in the book, and this is confirmed, the rabbi said that all your descendants will be blessed and good people. So, of course, I'm her descendant from a long time ago. So it was very touching to me. But she still went through really, really hard times. So what happened was, after that, a very wealthy Jew from Vienna adopted her and gave her an incredible education. So she was considered one of the best Latin speakers in all of the kingdom.
Wow.
This one, and that's remarkable for a woman of that era, right?
Right. Yeah.
Well, she ends up marrying Moritz Pulitzer, who was that time a very famous doctor. So people would, he actually lived in a town called Kitze, which is about an hour from Vienna via carriage ride, I guess. And all the, wealthy Jews and aristocrats would send for him to, if they were sick, they would send for Moritz Pulitzer. So she ended up meeting Moritz, and they fell in love and got married. But then Moritz was actually murdered by Napoleon's soldiers. So after the war, through one of the wars, and really one of the final war where France invaded Vienna, and then on their way back, these soldiers, they would just plunder villages. And
Yeah.
they ended up going into Moritz and Rachel's house, and they basically tortured Moritz. He had hidden all his valuables and everything. And, after, they dug up the basement, they ate all this food, drank all his wine, and kept torturing him to give them the location of his valuables. And he never did, and they murdered him. So Rachel was left with 5 kids to raise on her own. So you can imagine the destitution. And, I'm giving you this example, but
Yeah.
it's like one example out of so many people in these generations. They would start out under really tough conditions, build their lives up through education, hard work, whatever, and then through cataclysmic events lose it all.
Yeah.
So Rachel's just one example. I could give you more and more
Oh,
examples. There's
gee.
so many people that's what I found fascinating. And it almost sounds like these people are fiction, but they're not. They're, just as you had said, these are real people.
Yeah. Real stories, real people.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing, because for you to write a book like this, it almost feels like it's for your own family to read. It's for your own circle. It's kind of personal.
Mm-hmm.
It's not meant to be a public facing book. It's more just for your family.
Right.
Right. And if I sell 5 copies, then great. I help my family. But this is public facing, right? So how do you take stories of lineage and combine them with stories of events and then make it a book for people who are not related to you, that they're going to enjoy this as well? How do you do that?
Well, for me, it was just a matter of telling these stories. And again, because I had to read up on history, really
Yeah.
putting it in the context of history. And I think, to me, it's a great way to learn history, because you learn history, you're interested in history, but you're interested in history through the lens of people that actually lived it and what were their lives and stories really like. So that was part of it, was just really just telling their stories, but giving the context. So understanding what was going on at the time, what were the issues of the day, what were they facing? And in many cases, they were facing the same kinds of problems that we face today. It was just in a different historical context.
Okay. Who would you say, from a reader's perspective, would enjoy reading your book? Who do you have in mind?
Anyone really who likes history and
Yeah.
who is interested, I think, in learning history, but learning history through the lens of real people. And even though I wrote about my Jewish ancestors, so especially learning, Jewish Hungarian history, I think it's applicable to anybody, any religion. And I also put in the book some of the things that I faced in trying to discover this information and what are some of the challenges. So it's also for readers who might be interested in investigating their own history, which I hope everyone does, quite frankly, because I have to tell you, it was such a gift to me to learn my roots, that I actually
Right.
had roots.
And there's multiple people helping you on this journey too. It wasn't all self on your own. You
No.
did this by yourself. You had a lot of great resources, people to help you.
Exactly. I mean, Andras was amazing. I could not have done any of this without him. So,
How did you find him originally to work with you?
well, it was through a friend of a friend. It
Okay.
was when I got the box, going back to the box, and I had all these documents, official documents, and letters, and so on, that I tried to use Google Translate or Microsoft Translate. Hungarian's a really tough language, and they just didn't do it. And so I ended up, looking for somebody who could help me with the translation. And through a friend of a friend, I found this woman who lives about a half an hour from me. And she's the one who introduced me to Andras. But, it's interesting. I took just a folder from the box and I took them to her. And I thought I'd be there like an hour or something. We spent the entire afternoon. And what I really learned is that it wasn't just translating the documents. I really needed to understand the context. And I'll give you an example, something so small. Like there was a letter, it was actually a very sad letter. My great grandmother Margit, who I already mentioned, my great grandmother Margit loved to entertain. And this was after the war. And after the war, that was only the first hardship. She ended up, the communists came into Hungary and they basically expelled everybody. So she had to live 2 years on a farm and work on a farm. And at that point, she was 76 years old. She and my grandmother. But at any rate, when she came back, she had lost all of her houses. She had lost her house in Pest. They had a beautiful villa in Buda, on the hills in Buda, and they had a large 10,000-acre farm outside of Budapest. All of that had been taken from them, and now she was allowed to rent back 3 rooms in her own house.
Really?
So she lived in 3 rooms out of this. It was a huge house, a big apartment house that was owned by the family, and only family members rented various apartments. Yeah, she had to rent back 3 rooms. And she wanted to entertain. In this letter, she was writing a letter because someone had she had taken some tablecloths to a cleaner's, and the cleaners had stolen the good tablecloths and given her something back which was cheap and not hers. And so she was writing to complain about it. And when my friend Anna read this, she said, "Oh my God, in Hungary, women entertaining was it was a big deal to them. And when they entertained, they had to have the right linens, the right, napkins, the right dishware. I mean, their identity was wrapped up
Yeah.
in what a beautiful table they could provide for their guests. And so she was devastated by the loss of these linens. And so to understand, the little intricacies, like if I lose something in the cleaners, I've lost it. So what, right?
Yeah.
But to
Yeah.
her, this was a big deal, and especially since she had at this point lost almost everything she owned,
Yeah.
and she only had a few things left, and that was even stolen. So, yeah.
Wow. The context of the letters and the context of what's going on and
Exactly.
understanding the culture at the time and what people valued and how people lived. All
Exactly.
of that gives such great insight, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Any other surprises in that box that caught you off
Oh
guard?
my goodness. Yeah, a lot.
Yeah,
A lot. I mean, one of the biggest surprises was that my father served in a Nazi labor camp. I had
really.
no idea. No one.
Well, and he probably wouldn't talk about that then.
No, absolutely
No.
not. No, never.
Do you think that's kind of why your father didn't talk about things because of the history behind it? And
Well, I think there was a couple things. I think one being Jewish,
yeah,
and I think my guess is he wanted to protect us because, quite
yeah,
frankly, even when they came in the early 50s, America was still pretty anti-Semitic.
yeah,
So there was that piece, but I think also I think you hit the nail on the head. I think he went through such trauma. I mean, that you can't imagine the trauma that these people lived through. And, he ended up escaping from the labor camp with 5 other guys when the whole camp was bombed. So can you imagine as an 18-year-old, you're
wow,
first of all, he grew up in privilege, so he was quite spoiled. So then he goes to a Nazi labor camp, and you can imagine the kind of treatment.
yeah,
He's not only physical, not only brutal physical work, and I did get that from the letters because I did find some letters between my mom and my dad in that time when he was there, and the physical work was just brutal. But I think even worse than that was how they were treated. So I think the emotional and psychological scars were just incredible. And then the camp gets bombed, so almost everyone's dead, and these 5 guys, by some miracle, were not in the main part of the camp that was bombed, and they're saved and they escape. They got caught 2 more times, but then they finally made it back to Budapest, and then he went into hiding. My mother hid him and had hidden, but she was also hiding my grandmother. So yeah, to learn all this was what they went through was amazing.
amazing. My wife's father grew up in Holland during the war, and he would have pilots shot down on his farm,
Oh,
and they would be hiding American pilots under his bed. And he remembered, I remember he's passed away since, but I remember getting him to talk a little bit about growing up like that. And you could feel the emotion from him because he was just a young boy then. But hearing the Germans banging on the door to get the pilot that they shot down, and the American pilot just hiding right under his bed. As a child, he's right
yeah.
there, right? And what that meant for him growing up and how that shapes you, right? It's amazing to put the story with the human and realize that.
Yeah.
If we forget our history, then what do we have, right?
Well, and I know because, we only grow up, and I'll be honest with you, we were sort of angry at my father. My father, had an explosive temper, and he could be, but he never dealt with his
Right.
trauma, and that often happened with a lot of Holocaust survivors. And
Yeah.
so then the next generation, we sort of don't understand until we really understand those stories. It's that by understanding those stories, it really frees us from, some of the things that we thought were really tough growing up.
Yeah. It's amazing. I think that's the one thing that maybe we need to value more is our history and understanding where we've come from and how we got here. I think when we don't do the research and then what do we hand down to the next generation?
Right.
Right. Those stories. Right.
I can't agree with you more.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Because what do we have other than our stories?
that's right.
Right.
That's so true. So
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
Because you think about how many generations are we away from losing that part of our history.
Yeah.
You can go back, way back to the 1700s. That is outstanding. That's mind-boggling that you can go back that far. But for people today, they're probably thinking, I don't even know if I can go back one or two generations
Right.
in
But
my own family,
but
right?
even understanding, if I, and I always say this, I really hope that people will talk to their parents and learn what their parents went through. And if they have
Right.
grandparents, talk to their grandparents, learn what their grandparents went through. I mean, I can't imagine like my grandmother, who we grew up with, she wouldn't talk about anything either. And I think it's because my father said, hey, we're not talking about it. But
Yeah.
when I think about it, my grandmother knew some of these. I mean, it ended up being an incredible family, the Pulitzer family, with incredible personalities and some famous, Adam Pulitzer became to this day, he's considered the father of otology. So my grandmother would have known these people. My
Right.
grandmother was born in 1902. Most of these people died in the 1920s, but she would have known them as a teenager. So to be able to have heard these stories from her would have been just unbelievable. And so it's like, what I missed is sad. And I think that's why I so encourage people to talk to your parents, talk to your
Yeah.
grandparents,
Yeah.
and learn about your history.
And get people to explain that box of randomness
Right.
to you. Oh, this is from this and this is from that.
Yeah.
And do that while you have the opportunity.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a photo of family members from 3 generations ago here in my house. I have no idea who these people are,
Yep.
but it's been passed down to me through other people. And now I have this photo of what looks like strangers, but if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here.
Right. Exactly.
Right. So
Exactly.
I really want to know who these people are.
Yeah.
But as your parents age and as life does what life does, you don't have those resources anymore.
Yeah.
And then it's even harder to get the information you need. Right.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll tell you another funny story. Part of this, through this journey, I ended up learning about some cousins in California, and what's so interesting, they came east to meet us, and the first time we met, his name is Miklos. Miklos kept looking at me, and he kept saying, and finally he came out and he said, "Oh my God, you look exactly like my mother. You have exactly the same mannerisms as my mother," and so on.
Wow.
So even though he was a distant cousin, these family genes are like
Yeah.
there's just something, and there's just really something about knowing that you have these connections. It becomes very meaningful. It's hard to
It's
put into
inspiring.
words, but it's
It
really
is.
meaningful. It's very deep.
Very, yeah. I love it. It's a great project,
Yeah.
Linda, to pull all this together.
Thank you.
So my podcast is called Living the Next Chapter. So one of my questions I like to use is, you've done all this work, you've written a book. What is your next chapter as a writer, as somebody as a historian? Do you have something new that you're working
Well,
on that's
there's a
exciting?
couple things. There's a couple things that came out of this. One of them is, but mostly I was doing some book talks, and I was mostly talking to adults. But by accident, a friend said in her school that they usually had a Holocaust survivor come in, and the Holocaust survivor, unfortunately, most of the Holocaust survivors are dying off or are so
Right.
frail that they can't, visit schools anymore. So she asked me if I would do this talk. I did a Zoom talk, and it was to seventh graders. And they were fascinated with it. I just focused on the Holocaust and my parents' story, and put a little of, Margate's story and my great grandfather. I mean, they all have incredible stories. So, and my grandfather too. So, and then I ended up talking to another interfaith youth group, which was high schoolers, and I think not a single one of them knew what the Holocaust was.
Oh, wow.
So I'm sort of starting to really think about, how can I help? What part can I play? Because, it's so important nowadays with everything that's going on.
Yeah.
People at a very young age, we need to teach our children that hate is not okay.
Right.
We need to really, my mother always used to tell us, no matter what a person's faith, what their religion, what their ethnicity, what the color of their skin, what their economic status is, no matter
Yeah.
what, you treat everyone with compassion and dignity and respect. And I think that message is today more important than ever.
Right.
And so if I can help in a little way by telling these stories to help people our youth really understand that what hate can lead to, and that
Yeah.
everyone, no matter what, we're just all people and we're all connected. So that's sort of what my next chapter is
Okay.
I'm exploring what I can really do to do that.
Yeah. That's amazing. I love it. Linda, where do we go to follow your journey to know more about the story? We can see photos of the box, which I found interesting on your website.
Yeah, thank you.
But let's talk about your website and where do you want to send the listeners? And I have a question to wrap up when we're done.
Okay, great. My website is just www.pulitzersaga.com, and there's a lot of information on there. And as you said, pictures. The book is available through Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and it just actually was put in the Holocaust Museum. And
Wow.
if you live in Buffalo, Talking Leaves is a great bookstore, and they're carrying it. And yeah, and those are sort of the places. So, and then I'm on Facebook, Linda Broenniman Author, and Instagram, so you can find me there too.
Excellent. What are you doing today to keep track of research? And I'm sure you're always finding out new things about your family. How are you documenting for the future now? You talked about documenting for the past.
Right.
What are you personally doing to document for the future?
Are you talking about the things that I found out related to Pulitzer Saga? Yeah.
Yeah, any of that. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
what's so fascinating by doing a lot of these book talks, I found a lot of Pulitzers. It was a big family, and most Pulitzers, even if they're not related, we were from the town of Pulitz. So way back when in the Austro-Hungarian Empire made all Jews take last names. People didn't have last names. So they would give them the name, and often it was from the town they came from.
Yeah.
So they're all related. So unfortunately, Andras died, and that was a huge blow to me. He had become not only a researcher for me, but really a true friend on this journey. And so that was a blow. So I really took a step back and didn't do a lot of continued research. But now with all these family members coming out of the war, I'm starting to do that again. So, yeah.
Excellent. Keep documenting, keep researching, keep
Thank
sharing
you.
your story, Linda. It's really amazing to hear how all this came to be. Seems really random at the beginning, how this even started, but I'm so happy for you to see the results of all this hard
Thank
work.
you.
The amazing people that have come around you as well to help you in this journey.
Sometimes I think there's miracles that, the universe is looking at you and putting the right resources in place at the right time. So
It's great. It's a good inspiration for people listening to go and do your research, ask the questions, talk to your family while you have the opportunity,
Yep.
document, right? And share your story. That's the biggest part.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Excellent, Linda. Thank you so much, everyone. All information for Linda in the show notes. Go to the website like right now and grab a copy of the book. I know Linda would love for you to have this, and leave Linda a review.
Yes,
as well.
please.
Let Linda know what you think of the book, what struck you, what stuck with you as a reader. That way more people will find the book as well. And if you are any way related to Linda in any of this conversation, you're like, hang on, I'm sure Linda would love to hear from you, because we do have listeners around the world. So you just never know who's pressing play on this and might be going, I need to talk to Linda. The website's in the show notes. She would love to hear from you. If you know anything about anybody about anything to do with this story, I'm sure she'd love to have a conversation. So again, Linda, thank you so much for being
Thank
here.
you so much. I really appreciate it. It was fun to have this conversation with you.
Excellent. You're a great guest, Linda. Keep doing more of these. It's really, really fun.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much again for pressing play. As you've heard, great guests on the show. And one thing you didn't hear in this conversation is what? What did you not hear? Think about it for a second. That's right. Not a single solitary commercial for a mattress or a supplement or a whatever you call it. No. Why? Because we don't want to break up the conversation with commercials. So the fact that you're still here means that you are a fan of the show, I'm assuming. So if you want to help to keep the podcast going and to make me feel really happy, all I really care about is coffee, okay? I just got to be honest. I love coffee. I'm drinking one right now. It's starting to get cold. I need to warm it up. Helping us with our Buy Me a Coffee link over at livingthenextchapter.com and also in the show notes helps kind of keep the lights on around here. Remember, I'm doing this for free. I'm paying for everything. So I would love to have a little coffee donation, even $5 kind of fills up my cup. And I would love to enjoy a coffee from you. So if you're interested, again, thank you for listening. But you can use our Buy Me a Coffee link and fill up the cup. Thanks for being here.